Hello, welcome to the Spring Book Buzz with Denver Public Library. My name is Erin and this is Dodie, and we are librarians at the Denver Public Library Central Library location. And we're really excited to bring this Spring Book Buzz to you via YouTube today.
We want to make sure you know about Summer of Adventure. This is our summer-long program for children, encouraging them to read, make, and explore. We have fun activities and cool prizes. Register and learn how to get started at summerofadventure.org. Our first book today is The Mostly True Story of Tanner and Louise. This is a debut novel from Colleen Oakley, and the plot may just remind you of a certain famous chick flick. Tanner Quimby is 21, and after a tragic accident, mopes around her house, broke and ruminating about what might have been. When the opportunity comes up to care for an elderly woman, it looks like gold to her. Louise's wilt has fallen and required surgery, and now her children insist that she needs a nanny. Louise has a routine and would really like to be independent. But when Tanner and Louise meet, they are like oil and water. Tanner is immediately aware of Louise's quirky behaviors. It seems that Louise is not a typical 80-ish-year-old. Then again, Tanner doesn't appear to be a typical 21-year-old person either. One day, Tanner happens to catch a news story about a long sought-after criminal whose description is Louise to a T. She barely has time to question the validity of her suspicions before she becomes embroiled in the adventure of a lifetime. From Berkeley Books, this came out in March.
It can be a difficult topic to talk about, but will your loved ones know what to do when you're gone? Estate planning attorney Bob Cabassi wrote a workbook to help. About Me, information you will need when I've passed. This book is designed to organize and simplify the wishes of the decedent for their family and friends in a way that can lessen the distress they may be feeling. With this book, trusted loved ones who are left behind will know what to do, who to contact, where to go, and the proper next steps when a person dies. About Me is a beautifully designed and is also an essential legal tool for anyone becoming the executor of an estate, including legal definitions, helpful online resources and reference books, and probate laws, codes, and statutes for each state. If you don't want your family cursing you when you're gone, get this book. There are already a lot of holds on it, so get on the list now. This is from Beyond Words Press and was published in March.
This next book is a mystery with a dual timeline. The Vanishing at Castle MOREAU is from mystery thriller author Jamie Jo Wright. In this tale that is spread over 150 years, 3 women are involved with and in an old Wisconsin castle. There's Daisy, an orphan with nowhere else to go, so she becomes a housekeeper for a Gothic authoress who seems more evil than the stories she writes. And decades later, there is Cleo, who drastically wants to hide her identity, so she agrees to help a wealthy aging hoarder at the same abode. Intertwined is a girl who grows up only wanting to protect the skeletons of her past. Readers will be intrigued by the mysteries from the 3 different time periods that surround Castle MOREAU. The author masterfully parcels out the clues of the secrets hidden within the castle, skillfully building the suspense in each storyline, with several twists and turns. If you enjoy dual timelines and a clean read, this is the book for you. From Bethany House, out in April.
Rosella Kennedy, Camber Collective's Director of Impact and Equity, builds upon her career to foster intersectional equity and anti-racism with her debut title, Our Brave Foremothers, celebrating 100 Black, Brown, Asian, and Indigenous women who changed the course of history. Her book features short biographies of 100 notable women who are Black, Brown, Indigenous, or Asian. Each profile is easily digestible and illustrated, and each features an inspiring quote and a prompt from the author for further meditation on this subject. The interactive portion comes at the end of each entry, where Kennedy provides a prompt to get readers thinking about history with a lowercase h and the legacy they want to leave behind. Prompts include checking out community events at the local library for Pura Belpre, designing a postage stamp for Xian Shuang Wu, and creating a menu for your coronation banquet. Activists, artists, athletes, and scientists all receive long overdue recognition in this attractive volume. This came from Workman Publishing and is out this month or last month in April.
Our next title is Sharon Washington's The Blue is Where God Lives. In this book, a Black woman makes discoveries about her family and herself. 18 months after her daughter's murder, Blue is still lost in a haze of grief and guilt, born of both the violence and the fact that she never wanted children to begin with. She hopes that a week-long stay at the ranch, a remote religious retreat, will bring her peace. Instead, she begins experiencing visions of the past, glimpses of her own ancestors who have moved time and space to protect and guide her. As time collapses and Blue and her grandmother Amanda, an enslaved shapeshifter and puzzle maker, meet in the space of possibility, Blue feels the spark of a power and creative energy she has only glimpsed. This is a powerful work of Afro-magic realism that interrogates the legacy of slavery and roots of poverty, witnesses the beauty and power in survival, and asks whether belief, magic, and intention can forge new realities. This is from Overlook. It came out in April, and take a close look at that cover to see all the beautiful faces on it.
A non-religious liturgy and an education in world poetry, historian poet Jennifer Michael Hecht's The Wonder Paradox is needed, and it delights and succeeds on multiple levels too. Hecht offers constructive hints and possibilities for post-religious directions. There is an openness and sociological savvy to her approach to investigate traditions and the positives of what religion has brought to the conversation. But she also critiques beliefs that are damaging, such as using religion to justify bigotry, superiority complexes, and hatred of others. The book's primary focus is on the power of poetry to frame and support one's lived experiences. Each chapter gives space for poems from around the world that range in topics from birth to death, and it's accompanied by insightful interpretation. Warmth and enthusiasm suffuse Hecht's enchanting prose, which makes this book a moving, hopeful read. This book is from Farrar, Straus and Giroux and came out last month in April.
I am super excited about this next book, and I actually just started reading it last night, and I promise you it is a delight. In the early pages of Saturday Night at the Lakeside Supper Club by J. Ryan Stradall, readers meet MOREAU Prager on a 1996 day made unusual by several facts. One of which is that she doesn't feel like going to work at the restaurant she has inherited from her grandparents, a place she has adored since she was a kid. Also weighing on MOREAU that morning is the fact that her mother, to whom she hasn't spoken to in more than a decade, has sent word that she needs a ride home from church and would like MOREAU to be her driver. Add in the fact that MOREAU is married to Ned Prager, the son of a man who owns a growing regional chains of family diners, which keep popping up in small towns and peeling away customers from places like the Lakeside Supper Club. Conflicts abound between small businesses and corporate sellouts, between mothers and daughters, between red meat and rutabagas. Part love letter to supper club fare and Midwestern stoicism, part indictment of indoor smoking mores. Stradall's last delightfully combines humor and sadness. From Pamela Dorman Books, just came out in April. You're going to love it.
Typhoon, scurvy, shipwreck, mutiny, cannibalism, a war over the truth and who gets to write history. All of these elements converge in David Grant's new book, The Wager, a tale of shipwreck, mutiny, and murder. It tells the extraordinary saga of the officers and crew of the Wager, a British naval warship that wrecked off the Chilean coast of Patagonia in 1741. The men, marooned on a desolate island, descended into murderous anarchy. Years later, several survivors made it back to England, where, facing a court-martial and desperate to save their own lives, they gave wildly conflicting versions of what had happened. They each attempted to shade a scandalous truth to erase history, as did the British Empire. It's a fantastic, forgotten bit of history full of colorful characters right out of a Patrick O'Brian book. This one is great for anyone who enjoys history or sea stories or even true crime. From the #1 New York Times bestselling author of Killers of the Flower Moon. This book is from Doubleday and was published in April.
You might know this author, Gretchen Rubin, from her outstanding title, The Happiness Project, and she's back to tell us how we can learn to live more fully with 5 senses. Human beings tend to take their 5 basic senses pretty much for granted. Unless something goes wrong with one of these senses, we continue seeing and touching, smelling, tasting, and hearing without giving a second thought to the diligent, no-nonsense faculties that keep us so well informed about the complex world around us. For more than a decade, Rubin had been studying happiness and human nature. Then a visit to her eye doctor made her realize that she'd been overlooking a key element in her happiness, her 5 senses. She'd spent so much time stuck in her head that she'd allowed the vital sensations of life to slip away unnoticed. This epiphany lifted her from a state of foggy preoccupation into a world rediscovered by seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching. In Life in 5 Senses, Rubin explores the mysteries and joys of the 5 senses as a path to happier, more mindful life. Drawing on cutting-edge science, philosophy, literature, and her own efforts to practice what she learns, she investigates the profound power of turning into the physical world. This came out in April from Crown Publishing.
Here's the premise in Mastering the Art of French Murder by Colleen Cambridge, the first book in the American in Paris series. Tabitha Knight is living in Paris with her grandfather, tutoring Americans in French and taking cooking lessons from Julia Child. No, really, Julia Child. Yes, thanks to her neighbor and new friend Julia, another expat who's fallen head over heels for Paris, Tabitha is learning how to cook for her grandpère and Uncle Rafe. And into all this comes a murder, and Tabitha is in the middle of it all. As Paris rediscovers its joie de vivre, Tabitha, who recently arrived from Detroit for an extended stay with her French grandfather, is on her own journey of discovery. Paris isn't just the city of light. It's the city of history, romance, stunning architecture, and food. Author Cambridge clearly did her research while working on this novel, and the attention to detail is wonderful. We're talking everything from shopping habits, open-air markets, to contemporaneous indecency laws. Apparently, women could only wear pants if cycling. This book was published in April and comes from Kensington Publishing.
Our next title is in the science fiction genre. It's Ascension by Nicholas Binge, and this is a very highly anticipated book for 2023, noted by both Goodreads and Entertainment Weekly. This is a mind-bending speculative thriller in which the sudden appearance of a mountain in the middle of the Pacific Ocean leads a group of scientists to a series of jaw-dropping revelations that challenge the notion of what it means to be human. When Harold Tunmore, a scientist of mysterious phenomena, is contacted by a shadowy organization to help investigate the mountain, he has no idea what he is getting into as he and his team set out. With a hard climb ahead of him and hours of solitude, Harold begins to think on his past, a past he has carefully locked away. However, while he tries to unlock the mountain's secrets, his own secrets begin to spill out. What we find is a story of love, grief, tragedy, and a quest to belong. And this gives the story all its heart. From Riverhead Books, this came out in April.
From Lane Moore, the critically acclaimed author of How to Be Alone, comes a searingly intimate yet wildly funny exploration of the frustrating, messy, and at times deeply joyful experience of learning how to make meaningful friendships as an adult. Her new book is called You Will Find Your People: How to Make Meaningful Friendships as an Adult. Moore shares everything she's learned about how to finally make friends as an adult, how to identify your attachment style, choose better friends, become a better friend yourself, and how to handle friendship breakup grief, which can be even more brutal than most romantic breakups. Allen suggests 5 ingredients for the healthiest, strongest friendships: transparency, shared purpose, accountability, consistency, and proximity. Or, put in simpler language, we need relationships that are safe, deep, protected, committed, and close. This is a narrative work of self-development that uncovers the complex, frightening, and mystical world of friendship. Part memoir, part self-help book, and with Moore's signature self-deprecating humor, this title holds wide appeal for readers of all ages who want to challenge and better understand their sense of community. Comes from Abrams Image and was published in April.
Edible plants are nature's natural food source, growing along roadsides, sprouting in backyards, and blooming in country fields. North America's diverse geography overflows with edible plant species. From alyssum to watercress, chicory to purslane, Foraging Wild Edible Plants of North America by Christopher Irges provides everything you need to know about the most commonly found wild greens with over 200 mouthwatering recipes. Fully revised and updated, this full-color field and feast guide with images to the most common edible wild plants is the ideal companion for hikers, campers, and anyone who enjoys eating the good food of the earth. A chart at the end, based on the USDA's analysis of foods, demonstrates the incredible nutritional value of wild foods. The author also includes various stories about cooking on the trail and the types of gear and condiments you should always carry if you want a good meal. You'll find delicious recipes using wild plants such as chickweed deluxe, nettle soup, earth bread, and prickly pear ice cream. This comes out this month from Falcon Press Publishing.
Gina Apostol's elliptical, incandescent new novel, La Tercera, pieces together a century and a half of Philippine history through the story of a single family over generations of colonization, war, and catastrophe. In her first novel since Insurrecto, the author assembles a vision of Philippine history from the 19th century to present day in the fragmented story of the Delgados, a family surviving across generations of colonization, catastrophe, and war. Rosaria, a Filipina novelist in New York City, has just learned of her mother's death in the Philippines. Instead of rushing home, she puts off her return by embarking on a remote investigation into her family's history and her mother's supposed inheritance, a place called La Tercera, which may or may not exist. Rosario catalogs generations of Delgado family bequests and detritus, maps of uncertain purpose, rusted chicken coops, a secret journal, the words to songs sung at the family home during visits from Imelda Marcos. The more she digs, the more concerning her family's history becomes. This book is published this month from Soho Press.
As we're coming up on Pride Month in June, the timing of this book could not be better. Traveling the world as an LGBTQ plus person requires some extra planning and precaution. In the Pride Atlas, 500 Iconic Destinations for Queer Travelers by Marta Henson, is full of excellent travel advice. Informed, ethical travelers who want to know about LGBTQ plus rights and culture in the places they visit is considered as well. This swoon-worthy guide to the best places and events the queer world has to offer spans the globe, taking you from metropolitan must-sees, like the birthplace of Pride in New York, or the world's first gayborhood in Berlin, to lesser-known gems like a trans designer's clothing store in Sao Paulo, or the first LGBTQ bar in Nepal. The author and a diverse team of international travel writers have put together information on the best drag shows, pride parades, and film festivals all around the world, as well as resources regarding laws, restrictions, and cultural attitudes, ensuring that travelers can safely enjoy their sojourns and find community wherever they go. Whether you're looking for relaxation, romance, or adventure, the Pride Atlas will help you plan your next vacation. From Chronicle Books, out in May.
In this fantasy dystopian novel, two top women gladiators fight for their freedom within a depraved private prison system not so far removed from America's own. In Chain Gang All-Stars, the hotly anticipated novel from New York Times bestselling author of Friday Black, Nana Kwame Adeje-Brenya, welcome to an America where prisoners are used for savage entertainment. CAPE, which stands for Criminal Action Penal Entertainment, is a fighting league where the incarcerated are pitted against each other in a literal battle to the death. Tickets are sold, the rich become richer, the world becomes progressively worse. The two heroines are Hurricane Stax and Loretta Thurwar, women at the height of their power and top of their game. As they fight to stay alive, readers follow their relationship and anticipate a potentially devastating conclusion. The author displays his impressive range of tone and voice as he deftly manipulates several points of view through shifting time periods. All the while, he maintains control over the elements of his dreaded alternate America, using footnotes and asides to elaborate on the laws and customs of this world, but also making direct and similarly detailed connections to the real-life, present-day state of the nation's mass incarceration system with its brutalities and injustice. This book is from Pantheon Books and will be published this month in May.
This next title is for anyone that enjoys historical fiction with a little mix of mystery in it. Tim Mason, author of The Darwin Affair, has a new historical mystery out, The Nightingale Affair. In it, Inspector Charles Field hunts a serial killer targeting women. It's 1867, and Field is working as a private investigator in London when his latest case reawakens a past one. He is hired to track a woman whose husband suspects is having an affair. He discovers her strangled corpse in a lover's flat with a piece of red fabric stuffed in her mouth. This was also the trademark of a serial killer known as the Beast of Crimea, who targeted nurses working under Florence Nightingale in the 1850s. Field was dispatched to Crimea to catch him, which he thought he'd done. Did Field suspect the wrong man before, or is he dealing with a deviant copycat? Either way, he must race against time to stop the killer before more bodies turn up, and before his own daughter loses her life. Populated with real figures of the day, from Benjamin Disraeli to novelist Wilkie Collins to, of course, the saintly Florence Nightingale herself, and steeped in historical details of 1860s London, The Nightingale Affair plays out against a backdrop of a rapidly changing society. This came out in May from Algonquin Books.
As a Gibson teenager navigating life on the streets, Angela Sterrett wrote in her journal to help her survive and find her place in the world. Now an acclaimed journalist, she writes for major news outlets to push for justice and to light a path for Indigenous women, girls, and survivors. In her brilliant debut book, Unbroken, My Fight for Survival, Hope, and Justice for Indigenous Women and Girls, the author shares her memoir alongside investigative reporting into cases of missing and murdered Indigenous women in Canada, showing how colonialism and racism led to a society where she struggled to survive as a young person and where the lives of Indigenous women and girls are ignored and devalued. The author faced darkness and experienced violence, but she navigated the street, group homes, and SROs to finally find her place in journalism and academic excellence at university, relying entirely on her own strength, resilience, and creativity, along with the support of her ancestors and community to help find her way. Sterritt expresses her empathy for victims, survivors, and families, and drives her present-day investigations into the lives of missing and murdered Indigenous women. This comes from Greystone Books and will be published this month in May.
Here's a great new title for those who love fantasy and recommended for those who would like to try fantasy. In the book that wouldn't burn, Mark Lawrence has imagined a library to surpass all others, a repository for every record ever kept, from iron-bound tomes of sailing adventures to knot curtains of unknown and unknowable cultures. Readers follow a twin tale of a young girl, away from the dust, brought to the city built on the library, and a young man trapped within one huge chamber within the library between tottering stacks of books. When Livera's world is destroyed by Sabers, she must forge a new path and prove herself to people who view her as lesser. Ivar's life is very different. He's grown up in a vast library hall with only his siblings for company and no way of escape. The author combines epic and high fantasy with science fiction, time traveling, historical fiction, and an atmosphere that burns with elements of grimdark gothicness. It is a love letter to the written word, but it also addresses interesting themes such as the evolution of language, the cyclical nature of history, racism, autonomy, misinformation, education, and community. This is the first book in Lawrence's library trilogy. From Ace Books, out in May.
Filled with spare, breathtaking prose, Like the Appearance of Horses is both a standalone novel and the culminating novel in Andrew Krivac's award-winning Darden trilogy, which began with The Sojourn and The Signal Flame. It is a story about borders drawn within families as well as around nations, and redrawn by ethnicity, prejudice, and war. It is also a tender story of love and how it is tested by duty, loyalty, and honor. After Bexhet Koner escapes fascist Hungary and crosses the ocean to find Joseph, the man who saved his life in 1919, he falls in love with Joseph's daughter, Hannah, enlists in World War II, and is drawn into a personal war of revenge. Many years later, Bexhet Koner and Hannah's youngest son, Samuel, is taken prisoner in Vietnam and returns home with a heroin addiction and deep physical and psychological wounds. As Samuel travels his own path towards healing, his son will graduate from Annapolis as a Marine on his way to Iraq. Author Krivac impresses with this layered story of deferred homecomings and the elusive nature of peace. This is published this month in May from Bellevue Literary Press.
Titanium Noir from Nick Harkaway is a very entertaining slice of science fiction noir, or maybe tech noir, set in a fictional city in the near future where the extremely rich have access to a drug, T7, that extends their life and turns them into giants, titans. Like in all good noir, we have a wisecracking detective, Cal Sounder, who can hold his own in a fight, especially if he fights dirty, and knows every shady character in the city, all of whom come in handy. He's been brought in to investigate the murder of a titan. A dead titan is big news. A murder titan is unimaginable. But these modified magnates are Cal's specialty. In fact, his own ex-girlfriend, Athena, is a titan. And not just any. She is Stefan's daughter, heir to the massive Tanfamakasa Empire. As the murder investigation intensifies, Cal begins to unravel the complicated threads of what should have been a straightforward case, and it becomes clear he's on the trail of a criminal whose roots run deep into the dark heart of the world. Harkaway doesn't so much as subvert or ape the form as show a great deal of love for the conventions of noir. This is out from Knopf this month.
The Pepper Pot Diaries is Andy Oliver's long-awaited first cookbook. She's a British TV host, chef, writer, and musician, and showcases both traditional and new recipes, cherished ingredients, and vibrant flavors from across the Caribbean. Oliver takes readers on an exploration of identity and heritage as she shows how to create simple yet sensational dishes that will bring the unbeatable nuances of Caribbean cooking to the table. Through her travels in Antigua, Andy shares her deeply personal journey on reconnecting with the food she grew up eating, the flavors and ingredients that run through her heart and soul, and what the future might hold for Caribbean cookery. Her first cookbook is just as nonconformist as she is, less a list of recipes and more of an invitation to sit at the table and investigate the thoughts, tales, and tastes that took the author through lockdown. Her book and wider work also inevitably navigates her Antiguan heritage and her visibility as a female Black British success story in industries that take a lot from people of color, but rarely give much back. Published this month from DK Publishing.
Rivermouth, A Chronicle of Language, Faith, and Migration by Alejandra Oliva is a great gift in a time when migrants are demonized on the shores and borders of wealthy Western countries, none uglier than the scar that is the U.S.-Mexico border that was forged through U.S. invasion and annexation, powered by societal white supremacy. Oliva focuses on the physical spaces that make up different phases of immigration and looks at how language and opportunity move through each of them. From the river as the waterway that separates the U.S. and Mexico to the table as the place over which Oliva prepares asylum seekers for their credible fear interviews. And finally, to the wall as the behemoth imposition that runs along America's southernmost border. With lush prose and perceptive insight, the author encourages readers to approach the painful questions that this crisis poses with equal parts critique and compassion. By which metrics are we measuring who deserves American citizenship? What is the point of humanitarian systems that distribute aid conditionally? And what do we owe to our most disenfranchised? This is out in June from Astor House.
Juliet Capulet from Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet is the heartbeat of the world's most famous love story. She is an enduring romantic icon, and she is a captivating, brilliant, passionate teenage girl who is read and interpreted afresh by each new generation. Juliet, The Life and Afterlives of Shakespeare's first tragic heroine by author Sophie Duncan, takes us from the Renaissance origin stories behind William Shakespeare's Child Bride to the boy actor who inspired her creation on stage. The author draws on rich cultural and historical sources and new research to explore the legacy and reach of Romeo and Juliet far beyond the literary sphere. With warmth, wit, and insight, she shows us why Juliet is for now, forever, for everyone. This book is crammed with interesting nuggets. Did you know, for example, that West Side Story started with a Catholic Romeo and a Jewish Juliet, complete with an onstage satyr? Or that in the 1840s, Charlotte Cushman ravished audiences by playing Romeo, giving the play new life as a secret queer romance? Or that Franco Zeffirelli's Romeo, first choice for Romeo, was Paul McCartney? What makes Searching for Juliet so thrilling is the way Duncan weaves all these threads into a compelling history of a singular heroine. This book is out in June from Seal Press.
And it really was just an accident that this book came up after Juliet, because it features the photography of Paul McCartney, who thankfully was not Romeo in Zeffirelli's movie. Titled 1964, Eyes of the Storm, Paul's photography project provides an intimate look at the months towards the end of 1963 and beginning of 1964, when Beatlemania took off in the UK and the Fab Four rose to global fame after their first US trip. The featured photographs are McCartney's personal record of this historic period in music and were shot in six cities: Liverpool, London, Paris, New York, Washington, D.C., and Miami. A personal foreword is included in which McCartney recalls the pandemonium of British concert halls, followed by the hysteria that greeted the band on its first American visit. Candid recollections precede each city portfolio that form an autobiographical account of the period McCartney remembers as the Eyes of the Storm, plus a coda with subsequent events in 1964. Fans will see many previously unreleased portraits of John Lennon, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr. The idea for 1964 came about in 2020 when an extraordinary trove of nearly 1,000 photographs taken by Paul McCartney on a 35mm camera was rediscovered in his archive. This is from Live Right Publishing, coming out in June.
This book is another book that features a dual timeline. The scars of the past make themselves known in J.R. Dawson's debut, The First Bright Thing, an uplifting historical time travel fantasy. In an alternate 1920s America, sparks, people gifted with unique powers, are shunned and feared by wider society. Rin, also known as Ringmaster, travels the American Midwest with her Spark Circus, teleporting from city to city and decade to decade, while also fleeing from her husband, the Circus King, who used his own dangerous spark to keep Ren chained in a coercive relationship. As Ren and the Circus King circle each other and the threat of World War II looms, Ren and her chosen family learn that, though some evils are too great for one person to vanquish alone, there is unexpected power in small gestures of courage. Dawson's exploration of survival and healing forms the story's emotional core. A nearly perfect amalgam of Mrs. Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children and The X-Men, this story is inhabited by beautiful and imperfect characters. It is a delicious tale of magical outsiders, determined to find love and light, beauty and family in a world that fears and often hates them. This book will be published in June from Tor. Thank you so much for watching this spring book buzz. You'll find so many more things on a recommendations page, including core collections and personalized reading lists that you can request from DPL librarians. You can also check out our YouTube channel for more book buzzes and Friday 5 at 5 book buzzes with great books for you to read and enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you.